Hello and welcome back to the Horror Hangout, a podcast where film fans watch the best and worst horror movies of all time and talk about them, and sometimes drive ourselves into absolute insanity by trying to do as much of a film festival as we can. And you thought we're finished, we're not quite. I'm joined today by the writer director of film that we saw at FrightFest, The Rose, Seth Daly. Seth, how you doing?
Doing great, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming to join us. We were just talking, you were at Fright Fest live, but we didn't manage to cross paths while we were there. So very happy to get you on for a chat now.
Thank you. Yeah, we ships passing in the night, I guess. I was there all week.
Exactly. When you've got a
Yeah,
lot of films to watch, it's very difficult, right?
right.
To see much else.
Yeah.
How are you recovering from the experience? We're a couple of days back home now.
Sure. Yeah, it's a long flight, but it was a really invigorating experience. I think that's sort of that keeps going, and you got a lot of business to do, so it keeps you busy. But I'm feeling really great about it. It's fantastic venue and appreciative audience just to premiere the film, and that's what you dream of as a filmmaker. So I
Yeah.
was I was very, very pleased with the week.
And was it your first venture to Fright Fest ever, or
Yeah, first as an attendee, first as a submission. So
you've done the double? Well done.
yeah,
We'll talk about the Rose just shortly. I'll get the synopsis up and we'll go through it and we'll talk about everything the Rose shortly. But before we get
sure.
there, as we have the advantage of being in the comfort of our own homes and not out in the streets of London. We can spend a little bit more time with you, Seth, and find about of all the genres you could have found yourself working in as a filmmaker. How did horror get its hooks into you, and or have other genres tempted you in as well?
Yes, I think picking genres is a difficult task for a filmmaker because you love so many. It's like the worst person to ask what their favorite films are film directors because they love so many different ones for different reasons. But genre-wise, I'm the same. I really love horror. I love horror adjacent stuff where it's compounding genres. I love giallo. I love suspense thrillers, which this one is. I love uh, uh, westerns and sci-fi and fantasy and all the above. So, yeah, this actually, if I'm honest, pure horror I somewhat speak as a second language
Hmm.
because I didn't really grow up with horror. I came to horror a little later. Well, I think I think I'm doing well now, but I sort of started by speaking horror as sort of as a second language because I have the sort of more the underlying genres that I was more familiar with when I was younger. But now getting into the horror space and going to Fright Fest and seeing sort of what's being done these days with my peers and stuff, that was really invigorating. So, yeah, I'm excited to work more, and then I've got a few more ideas on the horizon. So.
Amazing. Well, we shall cover those shortly. Um, let's talk then about the Rose. So, in terms of premiere, was this world? Was this international? What were we sitting at with the Fright Fest audience?
It was world premiere. We had
Wow.
yeah, it was the first it's actually the first time I've seen it on a big screen, period.
Oh
The
wow.
la yeah, they not counting sort of, post mixing or something like that. This is the first time I had seen with an audience and the first time I've seen it on a big screen. And there was we did our post at Company 3 and they prepared the DCP for us. It was my first time sort of evaluating the DCP too, and I was quite pleased with it.
So
So.
seeing it as you intend an audience to on
Yeah,
that big
very
screen.
much. Everybody did a great job technically and brought it to everybody
And
as intended.
what was the atmosphere like sitting in that screening?
You know, it was a little different because the I was very excited for the screening, but it was a little odd for me because I had been sitting down in the stalls all week. I like splurged for a pass and I wanted to
Yeah, of
be there and see
course.
everything in the best possible place. And then I wanted to be with my cast and crew, and so we were up, top. And it's really cool to see from up there too, but we were further away. And so it was like, oh, this is different. And like hearing the sound mix in a different space and seeing how it reverberates and everything. It was a different experience. So I was trying to sort of put that to bed and more just experience it with the audience. So and it
Oh,
was and it
that's
was every there's not a bad seat in that house, so it was very cool. It's just a little different.
true story. And
Yeah.
the audiences when they came out, did they react how you hoped they would, how you
We
expected
had a
them
lot
to?
of people come up to us, yeah, that were very very complimentary and kind about the film. There was it's a little hard to evaluate while the film is going on because as you've seen it, it's a very quiet film,
Hmm.
and so the audience is very quiet, and so it's not say like some of the other films where there's a lot of there's a lot of humor in it or a lot of big kills or anything where you can really gauge the audience whether they're tracking, but with this it's like everything is dead quiet,
It's almost a
and
tension, right? You don't want to
yeah,
speak,
yeah. I
especially when
re
some of the confrontations that happen, you're like, shh, don't let them hear me.
Very much. And I take that as a win actually because the I remember seeing A Quiet Place in the theater when it first came out, and it was like that too. It's like everybody didn't want to crinkle their popcorn or didn't want to, make any noise at all. So I it felt like we were playing as intended.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like that's a great strategy when you can play it. When you've actually stopped people eating their cinema snacks because they're trying to maintain the quiet, you know you've done something right. Um,
Yeah,
Let me just run out the synopsis for everyone who hasn't had the chance to
sure.
read it yet. So tagline is "You will never leave." 7-year-old Lucy wakes up in the middle of a mysterious cornfield. She has a bloody wound on her head and no memory of how she got there. Discovering a dead body and an abandoned gun near the clearing, she immediately is confronted by three masked killers searching for her. A deadly game of cat and mouse ensues as Lucy tries to invade the gang while hunting for an exit from the seemingly endless corn. Um, I mean, where to begin? And I loved the
Mhm.
beginning there, and I don't believe I've seen such oppressive corn since I saw the signs a few years back now. Um, what have
That's good
cornfields
company.
what
Good.
have
I'm not trying to.
what have cornfields done to you in your past, Seth, to bring you to this point?
Well, they're neighbors for sure. I'm from the Midwest in the U.S., and so we're sort of surrounded by cornfields. You just throw a rock and you're going to hit one. And for me, it was I've talked about it elsewhere, but for me, this was my first feature, and I was really trying actively to make my first feature. This is the third thing I'd written to be a first feature, and for different reasons, each one was sort of a little too big to do because it's hard to get your first feature mounted. But this one was written very much with my resources in mind and trying to make something that was attainable but also cinematic. And cornfields are intrinsically cinematic and they're intrinsically sort of you said oppressive. They're oppressive and they're mysterious and they're claustrophobic. And when you're inside of them, I kind of liken it to shooting in a library because when you're in them, you can see up and down the rows, but you can't see crossways that much. You can see maybe a couple of rows over, but once it's past a certain point, it's all opaque. And so you can really be anywhere in a cornfield and really lose your orientation and not and you're in a different world. And so obviously cinematically that helps us because we don't have to dress a huge area every time you look at anything it looks great, but it was also just these sort of primal images were coming to me when I was writing. It was like what would be occupying the rows, what kind of stories would take place in there, what would be lurking there, and it just sort of became a natural follow from A to B. Oh, okay, what is she doing now? Who is she meeting? So all that came into play.
And you mentioned it's your directorial debut as a feature,
Mm,
certainly. Now, if I'm to lean into the old cliches here, they say not to work with children or animals, and you've done both. So
mm.
you went bold on those things. How were those experiences? How did you go about casting this movie?
Two questions. So on the children and animals part, I that's what I wrote, and I was keen to do that and keen to work that. There is some difficulties logistically with those things, but they really pay dividends for emotional involvement, for cinematic iconography and stuff. And I really want I one of my early images was this like little girl in red against this sea of kind of amber colored gold corn, and I really love that image. And I'm very much a subscriber to the Edgar Wright school of characters. Like a good character is a character you can draw,
Mhm.
and so I was very keen to do that with all of the characters in this. And then the dog kind of I think we worked with some rabbits too, but the dog was the main
Mhm.
challenge, and that was just a lot of fun to do. You have to really be logistically. It's good to get dogs early and train them for exactly what you want to do because this was actually a police dog
Oh,
named
cool.
Braggy, who unfortunately has passed away in the interim. He got sick, unfortunately. So this will be his last performance, but he did a great job, and so the uh, but he as a police dog he does particular things. He's trained to do particular things, and so he was like, oh, when he was doing those things, he was great and right on it. But when we asked him to do other things, it'd be a little bit of a challenge. So we had work with his trainer and sort of um, practice those things beforehand and coax him into those sorts of things. And so those are kind of some of the pitfalls, but really, really fun to do. And I think, once you get it on screen, it really looks great.
Yeah,
And then on the
they're good
casting
people to
side,
engage
oh
with,
yeah,
right?
go
As
ahead.
well, people, you see child characters, you see dogs on screen, and you've got that emotional weight, as you say there. People are invested in making sure they're, I think, as most people, horror fans, normal any movie fans, you see these kind of characters on screen, and you're hardwired to care about them almost instantaneously, right? And want them to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it also creates intrinsic, with a child, it creates intrinsic tension because you're already emotionally invested in them. But it also, a child by definition is not very formidable.
Hmm.
And like you don't feel like, oh, they can take care of themselves. You feel like they have to be careful in these circumstances. And so I felt like that was a, a good jumping off point for the story. And then getting the kind of natural segue into the casting, finding a little girl who can do that, and you feel like plausibly can hold her own in these circumstances was a little, that you need to get that done. And so we were very pleased to find actually a local actress named Brindisi Dupree, who I was looking for superhero energy, and she brought that in her tape. And I wanted her to be very not just cute, but also, like I said, formidable, but also athletic. Because you got to do tons and tons of things, and actually you don't realize how much she's got to do until you actually get into the shooting, and she's crawling and running and handling weapons and running from dogs and all these other things.
Yeah,
So
she goes through it. Forgive me, I don't have her IMDb in front of me. Is this one of Brindisi's early projects? That will she be
yeah,
thanking
well,
you when she's running a Marvel lead in a few years' time?
I hope that happens. She's really great. This was her first feature. She's done a few things since then, fortunately, but this is the first one, so I'm glad it's finally coming out.
Amazing. And we don't want to neglect the rest of your cast as well. You mentioned people who are, well, children not being particularly formidable. Let's look at the other side of the coin there. You have some villainous characters, particularly their leader, played by Marcus Woods, right? Who are intent. Yeah, I don't want to do any spoilers here, but are intense, are intimidating, both verbally and physically. What kind of energy did you ask Marcus and his colleagues to bring to their villainous roles?
Each one was a little different. Again, the visually the gang, I wanted to develop a very strong iconography there. So obviously they have they're wearing bag masks, they're wearing sort of work handyman attire, and I wanted them to sort of be a group that you were identifiable, but also the colors that we chose were also a bit of camouflage because they're in the rose. It's kind of a
Hmm.
brown within the gold, and the sort of tans and things. And so that was sort of visually how I was approaching the characters. And then I wanted each one within that to feel like they were identifiable unto themselves and that they complemented each other. So you've got the sort of very slim, kind of gangly character. You've got the sort of more militaristic type of character. You've got the sort of imposing leader, and then you've got the big henchman guy. And I was really sort of thinking of I'm a big comic book fan, particularly DC Comics, and I was thinking sort of with the big guy. I was thinking kind of Solomon Grundy,
Okay.
or in Horrorland, Jason Voorhees, or Michael Myers. That lumbering sort of imposing visage. And then with the leader, I wanted we could have gone a couple different ways with the leader because we saw a lot of good tapes, but what Marcus really brought to it, he has this incredible intimidating voice that he has, and he's very confident and still in his presence, and I really liked that, and so it gave it this, especially since it's a faceless role, the voice really became a character, and you feel like he has rapport with everybody. Like everybody knows where they are in the pecking order of the gang,
Yeah.
but that he also uh, exerts authority over the circumstance. So that's what we wanted.
Yeah, I really like it's certainly a very distinctive and a very powerful voice that comes in that commands the respect of these already intimidating characters, and of course is leads to some terrifying scenes when he's looking to extract some information from some other characters that we investigate here. Um, I will I will be led by you on how cryptic you want to be on this one, Seth. But there is a
Sure.
perhaps a third faction in play here, played by Douglas Freese or Fries, the who I
Mhm.
shall not name. How did you go about preparing for that role and be as cryptic as you would like?
Well, we can talk about the character. We just won't say what the character is going to do. But
Yeah.
there's an entity that exists in the corn. The corn, the genesis of that was I really wanted the corn to feel uncanny. I wanted it to have, it's a kind of a cliche, but I wanted it to sort of be its own character. I didn't want it to just be a location. And so anytime she moves through the corn, you feel like the corn is in a sense guiding her. It's got a plan for this exchange. And so the embodiment of that, I had a very primal image of this sort of very tall golden figure rising out of the stalks,
Mhm.
and just sort of presiding over everything. And that was the sort of genesis of the Moon Man, which is the character we settled on. And it's hard. I'm finding during doing press for this, it's very hard to actually describe inspiration, because when people ask, "Oh, where did you get the idea for that?" It's easier if it's a derivative idea. It's like, "Oh, we got it from this movie or that movie."
Mhm.
But when it's actually just like a primal imaginative image that you get, it's hard to like, well, came out of my head. So,
I
and
just
that's
thought
very
of the
much,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. So that's very much the case with the Moon Man. It's just like you have this. Now you can break it down and say, okay, what is he like? There's some other, cinematic influences. We definitely had Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth in mind, and
Mhm.
sort of Alfonso Cuarón's Dementors and Prisoner of Azkaban, but some other things like that. But and then not to get away from your question, but the how do we end up with Douglas and approaching that role? He actually uh, uh, he's alone in that he approached me for the part.
Okay.
Yeah, so he actually sent me a little note, and because the film, the breakdowns were posted and open for submissions and things, but he actually posted and he said that, if I remember correctly, that he had always wanted to play a creature role, like a Doug Jones type of part, and this was very much what that was, and he's I believe I'm gonna get it wrong. I think he's 6'7"
Okay, so
and very
even if the
lean.
inch is right, he's a tall man.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's just and so he's very tall, very lean. So he was the physique we were looking for, and he was really, really gung ho to do it. And so it just sort of made sense for that part. And then the actual crafting of it, I don't want to get too much into how we did it because you need to go see it. But
Mhm.
the actual crafting of the costume and things was tricky because there's such small tolerances. Like you have to really craft it to who's gonna be in it, and we're working remotely with different people in different parts of the country. So, but I think we got it done, and our designer did a really great job with it. So,
Well, yeah, you can feel free to share with Douglas next time. So maybe it's something about Doug's because it did have that sort of Doug Jones energy about it when you see
mm-hmm.
this character come into play and
Exactly.
as he begins to interact with the other characters as they find themselves in the rows. One more character question for you, if I
Yeah,
may. So our three protagonists, really. Obviously, we have our young girl who is our lead, but
Lucy, we got
Lucy.
Lucy.
So
Yeah.
Lucy is supported by. We begin in the home with three women, and like it's a family, right? And a father is mentioned, but never well, is discussed, but never seen
Mhm.
on screen. Is that a choice you made? That these three female characters at various ages would be kind of isolated against what besets them.
Yeah, very much. Again, it's like, where do choices leave off and inspiration begins? Because it's a little hard to tell when you're writing, but it just sort of naturally went that direction. It's like I wanted this to be we have a very masculine, maybe a bad masculine, but a somewhat of a masculine environment in the Rose with the bad guys chasing. Lucy. But and on the farmhouse, I wanted a more feminine environment, and I wanted there to be, we're sort of seeing life with these people before whatever happens to them is going to happen to them. And so I wanted you to really relate to them, really feel for them, and invest in their journey and their struggle. So when it comes to, let's see, with her, I guess we could talk about Kalia first, because
Mhm.
Kalia is the mom and the matriarch of the home. And what I was kind of going for that, I had classic westerns on my mind. So we have a, for people who haven't seen the film, we have a big farmhouse sequence in the farm in the movie, and I would really had movies like Hondo and The Searchers and Shane in mind, where you have this sort of really formidable, independent woman who is out facing this, difficult landscape and difficult way of living. And I wanted a sort of modern version of that to be there. So you've got the farmhouse sort of standing in for the homestead,
Mhm.
and the corn sort of standing in for the mesquite bushes, and all these other sorts of things. I don't know if you caught it, but Once Upon a Time in the West was also an influence on sort of the approach to
Okay.
soundscape and
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
everything. Yeah, and so that whole sequence is a bit like, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. When the bad guys eventually show up and come out of the corn, that's there's a few Sergio Leone dusters in mind with that. Yeah. So with her, I really wanted her to have that frontier woman, protective mother energy there. And then for the older, and she was played by incredibly by Lar Pictet, who did a really great job. And then Lilia, the older sister, who's played by Mary Montoya. I wanted her to sort of be occupying her own space. I wanted her to have her own life going on that's interrupted by, the plot that happens. And I wanted her to feel with that character, because she doesn't do a lot in terms of that's related to the plot. But what I wanted to do, to establish there, was that she has her own dreams. She has her own future that she's thinking about. She really wants to have a beautiful space and really wants to pursue her interests. And so I found that quite moving, and just seeing the girls live and do their things before they sort of genre tropes kind of descend on
I
them.
think that was something I really enjoyed about the film in general.
Mhm.
Aside from the action and aside from the big things that the things that you talk about when you're in the parking like
Mhm.
lot of the cinema and so on,
Yeah.
the way that their relationship seems natural, the way that you can see how they're related together. I think in a lesser movie there is a discussion, everything has to be very formally signposted and it's like, remember that I told you this and this is how you, and then when a younger character follows through with some of those actions, it's because someone explicitly said this. But I think you do a very, very nice job in the rows of, like, you can just see that they're related, and you can see without it having to be explicitly laid out that the capabilities that you see go through this family, because all very, very capable. Like at no point does anyone like, oh my goodness, I wish Dad was here
Anyway.
to fix this because I can't do this by myself.
Mm,
Um, I think you see how they're related, and it naturally filters down to how one member of the family has influenced the other and how their
mm,
lives all work together. I think it's very organically put together, and there are several points where you've given the audience enough to be able to work out, oh, they might do this, or oh, I bet their life is like that, without having to do, you know, this is every single detail of this family tree, and this is how
right.
they work, and this is what they eat for dinner on this day of the week, and this is when, like, I think it's very organically done. They do feel like a unique family, and the people they meet as well, you can see there's a relationship between them. So, for film,
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And
even for characters they don't get that much screen time with necessarily, you can see that they are part of the world, not just a cutout that was dropped in.
yeah, I'm really glad to hear that. And also just like when it happens and what happens was important. So
Mhm.
I didn't want this to feel like any special day. I wanted it to feel like an ordinary day. So it's like maybe it's a Saturday morning, and they're just sort of like they're just going about chores or going about fun or making breakfast or whatever. And then, what happens happens.
And then this
And so
happens.
yeah, yeah. I will talk briefly about the dad. So
Yes.
the dad, we never see him, and it's he's referenced, but and maybe importantly, but we don't see him. And the whole idea with that, and also I don't know if this is too much of a spoiler, but I was really playing with. Um, I'm a big Hitchcock fan, and so
Okay.
there's a lot of Hitchcock. Um, there's a lot of Hitchcock visual grammar in the movie, but there's also like Hitchcock thematics in the movie. So chiefly among them being the MacGuffin, and so I really wanted to experiment with the MacGuffin, and not just so I think Hitchcock defined the MacGuffin as what the audience cares about, but the characters don't.
Okay.
And so in this case, I was like, well, what if you don't actually? Okay, so it's something that the audience cares about, but the characters don't. Oh, sorry, that's reverse. It's what the characters care about, but the audience doesn't.
Ah,
That's
okay.
that's what yeah, I got it wrong. And what if you also don't know what the MacGuffin is? So what if you take it one step further and you're like, okay, there's a mystery about what the MacGuffin even is to start with, and then and sort of go on there. And so the father's identity not being revealed for a while, that's sort of connected to that whole concept. And so that was sort of what I was going after. And people have had various reactions to that. Some people wanted more explanation. Some people thought it was fine. But it was that's what was sort of up with that.
Yeah, I'm very much in the camp personally of I don't need everything explained. I'm quite happy to go away and have a little ponder about a mystery. And if you choose to reveal all those details in a Q&A later, fine. If that's on the Blu-ray extras, it's all a reason to watch them. But if not,
Yeah.
that is that is something that you can just make your mind about. I'm quite happy not being able to be explicitly told, which is why I don't care for the Alien prequels. But
Mm, 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 mm.
um
It's sometimes less knowing less maintains some mystery. Yeah.
awesome. I mean, I want to talk just as we finish talking about the rose here about where would you like to? I mean, it feels like you've built a rich world and you've told a story in this world. If circumstances were to align again, would you return to it? Would we see more of the Moon Man and his antics and the family?
Uh, yes. Maybe not that particular family,
Hmm.
but we would see other stories within this lore and with this style. I actually sort of made a little. Uh, should we be so fortunate? I made a little Bible of what are actually the essential features of a Rose movie, and having some corn in there is probably one, and having the Moon Man is probably another. So we'll hopefully be able to do more with that. I actually want. I'm a big fan of sequels that do something not unsatisfying, but that do something unexpected with the next movie, where it's like, oh, okay, it's more of the same, but different. But with this, I really want to do something that really captures the essence of the Rose property, and you get like the same things you liked about the first movie, but more so, but do something very unexpected with the
Okay.
story.
Now you've got the wheels turning in my head. Like, and
Uh,
I think it's a lovely idea to be setting it, with
Well,
the
and I'll
setting.
I'll give you a little bit of the lore too, because people have been asking about it, is the you know the rose to whatever degree. I mean, maybe this cornfield hasn't been there, but the rose have been there for millennia. They're in some sense eternal, and the Moon Man is in some sense eternal too, because he occupies them. And so it would be really cool to see it in potentially different places, different periods, that sort of thing. So that gives you a little bit of a tease of what's
Yeah.
on my mind.
Oh, you'll have the wheels turning now. You'll be getting fan theories in from me if from no one else, Seth, saying, right, this
There you
time, set in feudal
go.
Japan, it's a rice field. This is where we're
Uh,
going. Oh,
be careful about giving me those. I might use
oh, that
them.
one's free. I've said it on recording.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, um, I mean, incredible. So for you, Seth, right now we've talked about what the rose might hold for you in future. What projects are you working on now? If there's anything you can share.
Sure. We're focusing on getting this one out into the world and successful, and hopefully get us some runway to do others. But in terms of next projects, I'm interested in a sci-fi horror movie as a bit of it's probably set in the 1950s with a sort of invasion of the body snatchers
I'm in.
aesthetic. And then there's another one that I just finished called, oh, I won't say what it's called, but it's a horror western. that is like a proper Western, and that would be sort of jumping off of sort of the John Ford aesthetics, but in a more horror vein. So
Okay. So if those little teasers have got everyone salivating for your next film, Seth, where are people best to follow you to keep up with the news as and when you announce them? And of course, wider distribution of the Rose.
sure. Our social media handle is the Rose Movie on Facebook and Instagram, and my personal one is Seth_Daly Daly on Instagram. Right now I'm mostly posting Rose stuff, so if you follow the Rose stuff, you'll see what I'm posting. And then we've also got a website, rosemovie.com, where you can follow. Yeah, it's actually good to follow that for potential release dates. We don't have our release date set yet, but we're gonna update that when it's time. So.
Awesome. And in the short term, obviously, if people weren't in London last weekend, any other festivals, domestically or internationally, people can watch out for?
We've been very fortunate. We're getting good festival response. We've got Horror Hound in Ohio coming up at September 12th. The screening block is at 7:30, so get your day passes and festival passes now. And then we've got another screening later in the month at Albuquerque Film and Music Experience, September 27th. And then there's a few other festivals coming up, both here and abroad, that I can't quite announce yet, but
Follow
there's more
those
coming.
follow those
Yep,
socials and we'll catch up to that news. So if you are listening, we will do our best to share what we can as well when we hear of more screenings. But if not, you have all of Seth's and the film's handles to follow there. Um, Seth, I'm going to throw one more question at you to
sure.
finish up. Now, we do a podcast called the Horror Hangout here, so it would be remiss of me not to put you on the spot to have you to put together your ultimate horror evening when you're having friends around. I won't judge you for it, but these imaginary people I'm conjuring certainly will. So, um, in this situation, you're inviting, let's call it a mixed crowd. So not all hardcore dyed in the wool horror fans, not all, just your standard casual crowd. They're coming round to your place for a horror movie night. You're allowed a single or a double bill. What are you putting on for them?
Well, you got to do a double bill, obviously, because more movies are better than less
Of
movies.
course.
So for pure horror, I've got to say, probably my favorite movie is Rosemary's Baby. I just love that. I love that film, and it's got such an elegant approach to horror. So I think that would be really fun, especially if you've got people in the audience that don't think they like horror. I think that would be a good one to
They'll
show them.
certainly decide either way by the end.
Yeah, yeah. And then for if it was something more contemporary, um, you could go a lot of different ways with it. It's not really a horror movie, but I just have to shout it out because it was a gigantic influence on this film was No Country for Old Men, which it has some horrifying elements to it, but it's more of a thriller. But
I think you
uh,
can I think you can claim that. Like
yeah,
Anton Chigurh is a terrifying, terrifying man.
he is, and just the it's just such a perfect film. There's like one shot in it that might nitpick, but everything else in the film is just so terrific. So that you can't go wrong that way. But it would also be fun, since you mentioned it. Alien is a really good movie to show
Yeah.
people that in any environment. So probably Rosemary's Baby and the original Alien. So
Wow. No, that's a
yeah,
that's a good double bill. Would you go in that order?
yeah, why not? And
Yeah.
there's even some sort of thematic parallels between them. So
Yeah. You certainly
yeah,
like you've maybe nailed an excellent double feature. Cinemas will be
yeah.
thanking you for these ideas.
yeah. Well, thank you very
Amazing.
much.
Well, thank you very much for spending a few minutes with us, Seth. Hopefully, you've now fully recovered from your travel and you're ready for Horror Hound in a few weeks' time. Um, all that remains for me to do is to thank not only you, but for everyone who's listened, Acast for hosting the show, and of course, Taj Easton for our wonderful theme music. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.